Hi, I'm Craig with Surface Water Solutions. Welcome to our next video in this series on HEC-RAS. In this video, we're going to cover terrain modification. This is our third terrain modification video. The first one we covered bathymetry. The second one we covered how to get rid of no data values. And in this one, we're going to play civil designers and put in dams, buildings, levees, detention basins, whatever you'd like to put in. If you can put fill there or excavate it out, anything you want to add to your model, we can put into the digital elevation model by using a 1D geometry. Now we're going to start with a 2D model that we've already made in some of our previous videos. This uses the same terrain set that we used in our previous 2D models on what's new in HEC-RAS 504. We're going to go ahead and take this same data set and let's pretend that we are representing a developer, and we have to put in some sort of box warehouse or some structure here that's going to be in the floodplain. Well, typically you're going to need to put in a detention basin or some other feature to be able to mitigate for any impacts to the flood levels. Well, we're going to go ahead and do this with every single one of these features that you see listed here. Let's go ahead and start with the building, though. The building is going to be the simplest one to do. It's just a square in this case, and we're going to put this in as new geometry. I will call this one 1D terrain. This will be just for the warehouse. And actually, we can put every single one of these features into the same geometry. We're going to define them each with their own river name and a river alignment. This is a river center line, but this is really a bit of a hack. It's going to represent the center line of your levee, of your building, of anything else that you're going to draw. So in this case, I'm going to start with a building. I'll draw the center line here, draw it going this way. Here's my building. Each one of these features is just going to get a single reach for its alignment. The bank lines, as we were doing for the bathymetry, in this case are just going to represent the lateral extents of your building. So I will go ahead and put a bank line there and a bank line there, and then I'll add a cross section on either side of this, which will represent the longitudinal extents. Make sure that your cross sections cross each one of these three lines, not the 5 that you need for 1D hydraulics, but just the 3 that you need for terrain manipulation, once and only once. Make sure that none of these other lines cross. With that, I have now defined with these 4 lines the extent of my terrain modification for the building. We'll adjust those sections in a little bit once we put in a few more features. Let's say we need a detention basin as well. Well, we're going to use the same concept, making a river, and we're going to do this about 100 times here, where we start editing, and then once we have the edits in there, we have to stop editing, save the edits, and start editing again. So if my detention basin here has a center line that looks something like this, I will call this one basin. We can now define with the bank lines the extents of the excavation. So this will be the outline of my basin, and I'll make this somewhat rounded on both sides, and then we'll put in some cross sections. The cross sections themselves, sometimes I like to daylight them on the ends and leave those ones at the ground elevation, tapering out to my next section. We'll show you how that works when I get into the cross-sectional data. I'm just going to define this one with just 3 cross sections for now. And again, make sure they cross once and only once. You will see missing reach if you missed this with one of your sections, and you won't see a value here. So you got to make sure you see values for every one of these when you're done drawing them. That shows you that you've got what you need here. We do need access to this thing, so let's go ahead and put in a roadway as well. So I'll do that with a river center line. Again, this is not a river. This is the roadway alignment center line. I'll connect this little roadway here right across the Brisbane River to here. It's not going to make a whole lot of sense, but this is just for fun. So I'll put this one in. This could represent the bridge deck. It could be a floodway or Arizona crossing, whatever you want to call it. I do need bank lines again. These are going to represent the edge of the fill. Now, if I've got vertical walls on the edge of this, I can just follow right along with this thing. So I'll go here from this end to this end, and again, do it this way with a cross section that's going to just be on the ends here, and interpolate everything in between. And so again, this becomes the extent of my roadway between all of these lines. So let's continue here and see if we can put in a levee. Not sure if this will make sense to put it here, but let's go ahead and connect dry to dry so that we can block out this flow and open up this floodplain for developments or whatever we want to do here. So with my river, I'm going to just do a center line of a levee coming along my river here, and now I'm back into the dry. In this case, I want to keep this one fairly narrow, so I'm going to make sure that my bank lines follow that fairly closely. So again, stop editing, start editing. I will do this over and over again. Show the edge of my levee fill footprint. Basically, this is the toe of my fill that I'm drawing here, and I can manipulate the cross sections any way I'd like. So what I was going to show you here is just how your cross sections are going to follow the alignment even when it's on a curve. So if I edit my geometry, I can put one cross section in here, one cross section out here, and you'll see when we interpolate this that it's going to follow this curve. The other thing I notice here is that I've actually got some water that the LiDAR shot to, and you can actually tell here that when you look at the terrain that it didn't get included in the terrain. So just like in our bathymetric exercise that we did in our previous video, I'm going to go in here, and actually this one becomes a river center line. So this is not a building center line or anything else. This is actually the river. So I will go ahead and start up here where I've got some good cross-sectional data, and let's bring it through this dam. And this is one thing that you're going to need to do if you have a structure that's already been included in here and you want it to breach it or do anything to it. You're going to actually have to take it out of the terrain. So here's one way to do it. I'll go ahead and make bank lines along my water's edge like I did in our previous exercise for the Brisbane River. And so along the edge here, I'm going to go right through the dam, and same thing on the other side. Come around here and make this the edge of my terrain manipulation. So I need to add cross sections here as well. I'll just put a few of these in. You can get much more detailed than I'm doing for demonstration purposes. I'll just put one there, and then one down here at the end, and that way we'll blow through them all. Make sure you've got numbers on all of these. Once I put the dam in up here, I might try and block up some water, prevent it from getting downstream, and I'll put a diversion up in this area as well. So if you were a dam designer, not many dams going in these days, but if you were going to choose where to put a dam, you might want to look for some narrow abutments that would store a lot of water behind them. In this case, we would be flooding out a whole lot of people, but this is just for fun. So I will go ahead and start a river center line here, going from bank to bank, and we'll call this one dam. And actually, I have a dam already. That's we'll call this one dam center line and dam center line. The other one was taking out a reservoir behind this dam. What I'm going to do now on my bank lines, you have to make an initial guess at this, at how wide your section is going to be. And when I'm up on the banks, I'll have a little bit of fill. When I get down to the river, I'll have a lot of fill. And so I'm going to actually move this line a little bit outward when it's in the middle, just to represent how high the fill would be. So with my cross sections now, I'm going to edit these, and I'll put one right here, and I'll put one right here. And on this end, I'm just going to show you one feature, or one thing that I like to do to these. I could do this on any of them. I like to have my last cross section actually daylight to existing ground so that it transitions gradually up to the section that I want. So I'll demonstrate that here. We could do this on every single one of them. Just for time purposes, I'll leave that out on most of them. It is something that you could do on each of these to kind of nail down your transition zones a little better. So the next thing I'm going to do is connect my channel from here over to here, and this will be an overflow spillway, something where my dam or my reservoir, once it fills up, can start spilling over the sides here. So with my bank lines, I'm going to start editing those, and same thing as I had with the dam, the fill is going to get a little wider up near the top and narrower down near the bottom. And so I'm going to do that here, come down this way, put in some cross sections, and we'll put one on the upstream end. If you mess up as I did here, maybe you noticed this, I didn't put that in as an actual river center line. I put it in as the wrong kind of feature. So I'm going to start editing my river center line, put that back in. Until anything crosses it, it doesn't recognize any of the geometry until my cross sections start going across it. So with this one, I'm going to call this detention. This is diversion. and I'm going to put a couple of cross sections across it. And again, any of these things that you, if you make mistakes while you're drawing them, you might want to get familiar with the editing tools if you haven't done that yet already. These editing tools here where you can actually click on the features and delineate them any way you'd like. So I'll show you that in just a second. Once I've got these ones drawn, make sure I've got numbers for all of them. If I wanted to click on any of these and move them around, I double click. I can move the vertex up here, or I can add a vertex in there by clicking, hit escape and you're done, or hit Control Z as you could before, or you couldn't do before. That's a new feature which has been very handy. With that, I think I have, geez, I've got 7 of these things which I think cover most of the features that we've got here. We've got a diversion drain, channel excavation going through here. It's a canal essentially. We've got a dam that's going to go across this way, blocking flow up. We've got some excavated bathymetry that we're going to pull out here and remove this dam so that we could put it back in as a 1D feature later. We've got a levee that's going to block some flow here. We've got a building that's going to obstruct flow. We've got a detention basin right here. And then we've got a roadway that's going to cross the Brisbane River. So with that, I need to define my geometry. So I have to save this first, save my entire geometry. And now I need to exit out. Be sure to exit out of RAS Mapper before you go into the geometry editor, because you can get some issues going back and forth between the two. So I'll close out of RAS Mapper, open up my geometry window. It's blank right now, but if I browse to the one that I just created, which is this one right here called Terrain Warehouse, it should zoom me right into these features. So I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 features. I don't see the bank alignments that I drew, but I do see the bank stations where they crossed. Now, first thing I need to do is edit my cross-sectional data. And I'll do it in the same order that we did our other ones in, and I'll just leave this up here while we edit the cross-section. In each of these cases, I'm going to use my bank lines as the extents of my terrain manipulation. So basically, I'm going to blow out all the points in between the banks. And when I stick these back in, let's make this Costco's first skyscraper. So there's one station, and I'll do the same thing on the next one. Pull it in here, go out to the bank stations, take everything beyond the bank station, paste it back in here, and give this a height of 80 meters. So when I put this building in, you can now see as I go back and forth, there's my building section. So that's my building taken care of. Let's go in here and now do the detention basin. Same thing, I'll edit the cross sections here. Take this one right here, and we're going to go in between these bank stations right here. In this case, we're going to add some additional points. So I'm going to let it daylight out at the end of this one, and I'm going to make it, say, a trapezoidal channel that comes down to an elevation of 5. And in this case, we can design the side slopes a little better. You could use the channel improvement or channel modification tool, it's called now, to define this a little better with the daylight lines. In this case, I'm just going to put in some values here that make this trapezoidal. Do the same thing with this middle cross section here, and this one will be a little wider than the other. But again, I'm going to leave 2 of these blank so that I can put in something trapezoidal at an elevation of 5. And let's pull this one out to 40 and 120. I'm just guessing at some numbers here, and I'll do the same thing on the other end. So with that, when I put this one in, you're going to have 3 cross sections that are going to get interpolated out to these elevations. And as I scroll through these, you can see my trapezoids here. So with that, I've got my detention basin taken care of. The floodway, I'm going to do this one fairly simply and just make it a flat section across the top. Again, blow out everything in between the bank stations, put this one up, and I'm just going to give my floodway an elevation of, say, 17. So this will be more like a bridge deck, I guess. And I'll do the same thing on the other end. This one will be sloping up because the other side's got a hillside on it. So for this one, instead of being flat like our building was, we're going to have a longitudinally sloping feature here. So in this case, it's going to be up to, say, 44, and that will then match with our existing ground. And what HEC-RAS will do is just vertically interpolate between your new topo and your old topo. Now let's get into our levee. If you see a missing reach, which I've got here, you can delete that reach. And by going to your full list here, this is one that came up because I had started something and not finished it. Once that's deleted, you can see it's gone here. Now it looks like this one came out, and this is a good exercise to show you. If I missed my cross section, if it didn't cross this one here, I'm going to have to go back in and add that. So this is something that I messed up, but I'm going to show you how to do this anyway, so maybe it'll be something that you run into as well. If you ended up missing one of the sections here, and you can see here when I zoom in, my cross section doesn't exist there, so I need to put another cross section back in. I had not actually hit this reach with it, so it just sat there on its own as an orphan reach. So if I go back in here now and put in a cross section that does cross them all, it gets a number, and so now I'm good. So when I stop editing this, I can exit back out of RAS Mapper and go into my geometry viewer, and there it is. So with this one, I'm going to go and put a trapezoidal fill section in this case, editing my cross section, going in between my bank stations, and you can always have a look at these bank stations here from 9.7, and if you didn't see what I was doing before, from 9.7 to 49, I'm using these stations here, which are giveaways because they get a tighter interpolated section. That's how you can tell where they're at. Those are the sections that I've been pasting around here. In this case now, I'm going to go up instead of down like I did in my detention basin. I'm going to go up, say, to, I'll make this one 20 to 40. So I've got a 10-meter horizontal, maybe go up to 25. This will be a fairly high and steep levee. And I'll do the same thing on the other end. Again, look for these longer ones here, delete everything in between. And I'll paste this back in, leaving 2 blank so that I can make my trapezoidal levee section in between. So with that, I can have a look at both of mine there. This is my end sections, and it's going to interpolate those along this line. Now let's go in and put our bathymetry in. For our bathymetry, it's going to be the same thing. I'm going to go out to my extents of the bank stations, blow out everything in between, and we'll go ahead and leave a couple of things blank here. You could leave 3 or 4 of these and put a low flow channel in. I'm just going to make it flat across the bottom. Well, in this case, let me go ahead and show you how to do that. If I come in here in my bathymetry and blow these sections out, I'll take this one out to 35, take this one out to 65, and then right in the middle of the channel, maybe right here at about 45, I'll put a low flow channel here. So that will come down to about 10, and then 10.8, 10.8. Just see if you like how that looks. If you don't like it, you can move it away. You could use the graphical cross-section editor, anything you'd like to see. So there's my bathymetry. I'll do the same thing now here in these other ones just to keep it a little quicker. I'll just blow these ones out and put in maybe 2 sections in between. And I'll show you, you can do it just with a single section as well. So if I go to 50 and 120 and pull this one down to, say, 7, I've got a little trapezoidal section in there. And on my last one, let's try doing it with just a single section in here, a single point in the middle. Actually, no, this one is going to be the end section right here, which we're going to use to interpolate out to this one. And just have a look at what this looks like in the end when we interpolate out here. You'll see that it's going to gradually transition from one section to the next using that center line alignment. Again, you can add as many points as you'd like. You could take real bathymetric section data and put that in there. Now, 2 more to go. My dam, I'm going to put this one in here, edit the sections. In this case, I'm going to blow out what's in between my bank stations. And let's do this as a single trapezoid. And then on our end sections, as we discussed, I'm going to go ahead in that one and put in a little more detail, and then I'm going to let it transition gradually from the daylight section on the end. So this one is going to be at 36. Let's put the dam up, say at 38 meter elevation, and we'll gradually transition that out, say from 50 to 80, just making myself a little bit of a dam there. Do the same thing in the middle, and I can see where I'm at right there in the middle. This is going to come way up. This is a cross section going right across the middle of my channel, so I need to come back up to the elevation that I was at right here, which is 38. So I'm going to make a 38 meter high dam right in the middle of this and go blowing out my sections in between right there. Take my end data past that and put in my dam at an elevation of 38. And again, I can make this slope up as much as I'd like. I'm going to pull this one up maybe to 100 and to 200. This is going to be a big fat dam in the middle. Let's make this a little narrower. 120 to say 160. And you can see what this looks like and adjust it as needed. So there's my dam coming through the middle. And at this end one right here, again, I'm going to use this one here to daylight to, and then this one here to come back up to, well, in this case it'll come down to 38 meter elevation, which is the crest of my dam. So I'm going to come back out here to my end bank station, blow these out, and put in a trapezoidal dam that's going to be at an elevation of 38. In this case, that's below ground. I could have this thing sloping a bit, but let's come up here to 50 and 80, and now I've got a section there. And what you'll see then is that this is going to gradually transition back to the road, to the elevation of the existing ground right here. So last one. And these are not pretty structures, but you'll see what they look like in the end, and then you can make these adjustments as you see fit. In this case, we're going to just put a diversion in. I could just allow this one to transition out, and maybe we'll do that to show you what this looks like. When I edit this cross section, I'll leave this one as it was, since this is a little riverway with an elevation of about 30, and then as I move down into the middle, I'm way up 10, 20 meters higher, and then I'm back down below 30. So I'd like to blow out everything in the middle right here, and I'll leave the other sections as they were. So I'm going to blow everything out in between here, and go to my bank stations, paste the rest of it in, and this will now be an excavated section that I'll put a river channel in. I can choose my width here, and choose my elevation. Let's have this one going down to the same elevation as the others. I'll take it to about 32 so we can get some spill across that. I could build myself a spillway in the middle of this thing. Let's take this down from about 100 to maybe 300, and we'll see how that looks in our channel. That's going to be a big wide diversion channel now. So let's see what this looks like. I might narrow this down just a little bit. And just to show you how you can use the graphical section editor, I'll take this one and move it around that way. That can be a nice handy way of making some very rough changes. So with that, I will edit that and save my geometry. That's all I need in geometry. Now I just need to take this thing and turn it into a terrain. So I'll close out of the geometry editor here, open up my RAS Mapper window, and in RAS Mapper I now have this terrain called 1D Warehouse. So I'll zoom to this one here, and you can see all of my features, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 features. With this one I'm going to right click, export to layer. Remember to only do the channel on this one. If I had drawn this one and wanted to interpolate from the end sections, or the ends of the cross sections, I could do that. But in this case I have actually deliberately drawn the channels to be the edge of my terrain manipulation. So I'm going to create this from a geotiff and make this one at a 1 meter resolution. This will be 1D terrain warehouse, and all the mitigating features. Hit save, 1 meter, off you go, and it's going to export my terrain. Again, it hasn't put it anywhere yet. I need to manipulate my terrain and create a new one by merging these things together. So first I'm going to stack these things on top of each other. Now, this goes back to the previous exercise that we did. Here is the one that we've just done, the 1D terrain warehouse. I'm going to merge it together with my Brookfield 5 meter, but I'm also going to need to take my bathymetry, which was in the river channel, and my no data values and stack those as well. And if you didn't catch those in the previous videos, you might want to watch those as well. Remember, no data goes at the very bottom. That will blow out your no data values, and it'll see right through them. This is my existing terrain as it was when I received it, with no modifications. I'm going to take the bathymetry, which is my river bathymetry, put that on top. But because I've got a bridge going right over the top of my bathymetry as well, I'm going to take this other one and stick it right on top, which has my 7 features here that I've put in. Don't ever leave this as just terrain. We're going to open this up and call it, say, merged warehouse. I could be a little more descriptive on that, but for our purposes now, that's what I'm going to call it. So with that, I'm making a brand new terrain here that I can then use as my project conditions terrain, and then I can save my geometry that I've already run to make this floodplain that I've already seen here, and make a new geometry that's exactly the same. I'll save the geometry as a new name, and then I'm going to go in and put this terrain in as an association. And when I run that, I can compare them and have a look at the two. So now let's see how we did. I'm going to turn off my geometries. I'm going to turn off my results and my map layers. I'll turn everything else off, get rid of this one, and now let's see what we've got here. I've got a diversion drain that I put through the mountain here. I've got a dam that I built here. That's an ugly one, but it is a dam. Here's a levee. Here's my building. Here's my detention basin, and here's my roadway. So we did all of those features in maybe about 15 minutes here, and you could manipulate these any way you like. Now I'm going to run this again, so I'm actually not going to walk you through that in this video, but I'm going to reassociate the terrains with this one and show you a comparison between the two just for fun. So I just ran that one, and let's see how we did here. If I come in and check out our new project and turn on my depth map, I'll change the scale here to a little less than 15 meters. That's quite deep for the legend. Now let's see what happens with the flood as it comes up and back down again. Now I can animate this any way I like, cut cross sections through it. It doesn't look like it's what happened is in this area, we put in the bridge deck, but we would now have to put in culvert barrels. What I've done is backed up with the bridge deck. I've actually built a dam across the Brisbane River, spilled into my spillway, which you can see around the building what happened there. My other dam is holding water back as well. I've got the this existing dam that disappeared, and now my levee actually didn't hold water because it's leaking. I would need to put a brake line right through that in order to get it to be honored. But that's all just for fun here. Let's have a look at our particle tracing and see what kind of cool little features we've got going on with the eddies, all this turbulence that we've got as it goes around this bridge and shoots around our building and then back into the channel. So essentially we've diverted the Brisbane River right into our new IKEA or Costco or whatever it is. So yeah, this one would need some work to play around with, but you can see how we used 1D geometries to manipulate our terrain. You can put in any features you like and then run them as 1D or 2D or coupled 1D, 2D, whatever you'd like to do. So I hope you enjoyed that. We'll play around with some more of these. Come to a class if you want to see how to do this live or join one of our online sessions. Check out our website at surfacewater.biz if you want to know a little bit more about this. So enjoy, and I look forward to hearing from you. Thanks.